I am Margaret White, and I am 76 years old. Half a century ago, my husband and I poured our blood and tears into building the Chicago Chronicle media empire, a symbol of truth, a voice for the powerless. But just 6 months after I made my only son, Arthur, the CEO, he turned his father's life's work into a cheap tabloid, replacing hard-hitting investigations with sensational headlines about pop stars' heartbreaks. In the boardroom, in front of everyone, he called my principles obsolete and told me to be quiet. But he made one fatal mistake. He forgot that I am still the majority shareholder. With the help of my oldest friend, our CFO, we conducted a quiet investigation and discovered that he and that COO of his created a shell company to embezzle over $2 million, funding their lavish lifestyle on the backs of hundreds of employees. Now I hold all the evidence, enough to put him in prison and destroy his life forever. He thought a mother's love would keep me silent. But he forgot one thing: before I was his mother, I was the woman who built this empire. And I will not let anyone tear it down. The smell of cheap ink is what I notice first. It's a cloying, chemical scent that clings to the air in the boardroom, a place that once smelled of worn leather, old paper, and the strong, black coffee my husband, Robert, used to brew. I run a finger over the front page of our flagship paper, the Chicago Chronicle. The paper feels slick, glossy, not like the honest, porous newsprint we built this company on. The headline screams in a font size we once reserved for declarations of war: pop stars' secret sorrow, the tears behind the tattoos. My stomach turns. For 50 years, the Chicago Chronicle stood for truth. It took down corrupt city officials, exposed corporate malfeasance, and gave a voice to the voiceless. Now, it was peddling celebrity gossip like a back-alley tabloid. My son, Arthur, stands at the head of the long mahogany table, the same table where Robert and I signed the papers to launch our first radio station back in '72. He's wearing a suit that costs more than my first car, his smile as bright and artificial as the screen behind him, displaying rapidly climbing engagement metrics. He's been CEO for 6 months. 6 months was all it took to start dismantling a lifetime of work. As you can see, Arthur says, gesturing to a chart that looks like a neon green mountain range, our digital footprint has expanded by 200%. Clicks are up. Time on site is up. We are monetizing content in ways this company has never seen before. A few of the newer board members, young tech investors Arthur brought in, nod enthusiastically. But I look across the table at Elias Vance, our CFO for 30 years and my oldest friend. His face is a stony mask, his eyes fixed on the offensive headline in my hands. He sees it too, the rot. "Arthur," I say, my voice quiet but carrying the weight of my authority. The room falls silent. Even after stepping down, my voice still commands a certain respect. For now, this headline, this is not who we are. Arthur's smile tightens. It's the same look he'd get as a boy when I'd catch him with his hand in the cookie jar, a mix of guilt and defiance. "Mom, Margaret," he corrects himself, a deliberate choice to remind me of our professional setting. "With all due respect, you're looking at it through a legacy lens. This is what drives engagement. It's a competitive market. We have to adapt or die." "Adapt?" I hold up the paper. "This isn't adaptation, Arthur. This is surrender." We built our reputation on integrity, on the principle that facts matter more than feelings, especially the feelings of a 20-year-old with a new tattoo. Where is the investigative piece on the zoning fraud at City Hall? David promised me it was almost ready. I glance at David Chen, our long-suffering editor-in-chief, a man I hired straight out of journalism school. He avoids my gaze, staring intently at his notepad. He's a good man, a good journalist, caught between the company's past and its terrifying new future. It's Chloe Sterling who answers for him. She's Arthur's new chief operating officer, a woman who speaks exclusively in corporate buzzwords and looks at me as if I'm a fossil she's being forced to study. "The zoning piece was thin," she chimes in, her voice sharp. "It lacked a strong human interest hook. We've pushed it back for redevelopment." The metrics on municipal corruption stories are consistently low, Margaret. They don't convert to subscriptions. "We don't write stories to convert subscriptions, Ms. Sterling," I reply, my voice turning to ice. "We write them because they are true and because the public has a right to know. That is the entire point of a free press. It's not a business model, it's a civic duty." Arthur steps in, placing a placating hand on my shoulder. I flinch. "Mom, I understand your passion. I inherited it. But passion doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't keep hundreds of people employed. We're running a business in the 21st century. The old rules simply don't apply." He pats my shoulder, a gesture meant to be comforting, but that feels deeply condescending, as if he's soothing a confused old woman. Let's move on to the Q3 projections. I withdraw my hand from the table and fold it in my lap. I say nothing for the rest of the meeting. I watch as Arthur and Chloe present a vision of the Chronicle that is unrecognizable. They talk about synergistic content partnerships with vapid influencers, about algorithm-driven news cycles, about pivoting to video content that consists of listicles and celebrity home tour. They are not just changing the company, they are hollowing it out, leaving a shiny, profitable husk where its soul used to be. Elias catches my eye several times, a silent question in his gaze. Are you going to let this happen? When the meeting adjourns, I wait for the room to clear. Only Elias remains. He walks over slowly and sits in the chair beside me, letting out a long sigh. Well, that was bracing. That's one word for it, I say, my eyes still fixed on the door Arthur had just walked through. He's selling off the crown jewels for a handful of magic beans, Elias. He thinks the beans are the real treasure, Margaret. He's blinded by the numbers on his screen. He doesn't see the value in what he's destroying. The trust we spent half a century building, he's liquidating it for clicks. And that woman, Chloe Sterling, where did he even find her? Silicon Valley. She made her name gutting a tech news site and turning it into a pop culture blog. She calls herself a disruptor. I call her a vulture. I finally stand, my joints aching with a weariness that has nothing to do with my age. Weariness of the spirit. I walk to the window and look down at the bustling streets of Chicago. Our building, the Chronicle Tower, was once a beacon. People looked up at it and knew that inside, an army of journalists was fighting for them. What do they think now when they see it? He doesn't listen to me, I say, more to myself than to Elias. He smiles, calls me Mom, and then does exactly what he wants. He thinks I'm a relic, a figurehead to be tolerated until I finally fade away. You are the founder, Margaret, and you are still the majority shareholder. That's not a relic. That's a queen with a crown, whether she chooses to wear it or not. I turn back from the window, a cold resolve beginning to form in the pit of my stomach. He was right. Robert and I had structured our wills very carefully. I owned 51% of the voting shares. I had handed my son the CEO title, the corner office, the power to run the day-to-day operations. But I had never, ever given him control. I had trusted he would honor the legacy. I had been wrong. He's my son, Elias, I whisper. The words feel like ash in my mouth. I know, he says gently. But this is bigger than that. This is about the hundreds of families who depend on this company and the millions of readers who depend on us for the truth. Robert would have, he trails off, not wanting to speak for the dead. But I knew what Robert would have done. He would have fought. And so will I that evening. I sit in my study, surrounded by a lifetime of memories. Framed front pages hang on the walls, our Pulitzer Prize for the series on police corruption, the headline announcing the end of the Vietnam War, the first grainy images from the moon. This was my life's work. This was our promise to the world. I pick up the phone. It takes me a moment to find the number, one I haven't called in years. It belongs to a man named Jameson Rook. He's the editor of the Chicago Tribune, our fiercest and most honorable competitor, a man I respect, a man who still believes in the power of real journalism. He'd be the last person Arthur would ever suspect. The phone rings twice before he picks up. Rook. His voice is gravelly, tired. Jameson, I say. It's Margaret White. There's a pause on the other end of the line. I can almost hear the gears turning in his sharp mind. Margaret, to what do I owe the pleasure? Decided to finally sell me that old printing press I've always wanted. A small smile touches my lips. Not today, I'm calling because I have a story for you. A big one, but it requires the utmost discretion. Another pause, this one filled with intrigue. My entire business is discretion. I'm listening. It's about the future of the Chicago Chronicle, I say, looking at the headline on my desk, and the people who are trying to burn it to the ground. They thought they had put me out to pasture. They thought my time was over. They were about to learn that you don't build an empire by being a quiet old woman. You build it by knowing how to fight, and I was just getting ready for the war. Jameson Rook chose the place. A small, dark bar called the Embers, tucked away in a loop alleyway that smelled perpetually of rain and old brick. It was a reporter's bar, a place where secrets were currency and the bartender knew how to be deaf. Jameson was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth, a glass of bourbon in front of him. He looked every bit the grizzled newspaper man from a black-and-white movie, rumpled suit, tired eyes that had seen too much, and a cynical twist to his mouth. Margaret, he said, nodding toward the seat opposite him, you look like a woman on a mission. I am, I said, sliding into the worn leather booth. I ordered a club soda. I needed a clear head. Thank you for meeting me. Don't thank me yet. My curiosity is warring with my common sense. The last time a white from the Chronicle wanted a private meeting, it was your husband trying to buy my best political cartoonist. I said no then, too. I'm not here to buy anything, Jameson. I'm here to give you something, a story. He took a slow sip of his bourbon, his eyes never leaving mine. Stories are my business, but stories from a direct competitor given by its founder? That's not a story, Margaret. That's a Trojan horse. What's the catch? The catch is that you have to do the work. You have to assign your best investigative reporter, someone meticulous and fearless, and their name can never be connected to me. You want to burn down your own house and have my paper hold the match? Why? Did the boy wonder finally push you too far with the trash he's printing? He is dismantling a 50-year-old institution and selling it for parts, I said, my voice low and fierce. He is trading public trust for advertising revenue. He's taking the name Robert and I built and dragging it through the mud. But this is more than just a difference in editorial philosophy. I believe he's hiding something. I believe the rot goes deeper than just the front page. Jameson leaned forward, the cynicism in his eyes replaced by a flicker of genuine journalistic interest. This was the language he understood. Rot. Corruption. A story hidden beneath the surface. What kind of rot are we talking about? I don't know yet, I admitted. That's where you come in. My access inside my own company is limited. They see me as a ghost at the feast, but I believe there are financial irregularities. Waste, perhaps worse. My son and his new COO, Chloe Sterling, are living lives that seem extravagant even for their salaries. I need someone to follow the money, someone from the outside who won't be noticed. He was silent for a long time, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. He was weighing the risks. If this blew up in his face, he'd look like a fool. But if it was real, a scandal at the heart of the Chronicle, his lifelong rival, it was the kind of story that wins Pulitzers. Who's your inside man? He asked. I don't have one yet, but I'm working on it. For now, all you need to know is that if your reporter finds something, I will provide the confirmation, the proof. And what do you get out of it? Revenge? I get my company back, I said simply. I'm not trying to destroy the Chronicle, Jameson. I'm trying to save it. The story will hurt, yes. The stock will fall, but it will be a cleansing fire. It will expose the infection so we can heal. He stared at me, searching for the lie, the angle. Finally, he gave a slow nod. All right, Margaret, I'll put my best on it. A woman named Sarah Jennings. She's young, but she's a shark. She won't be traced back to me, and she certainly won't be traced back to you. But if this turns out to be a wild goose chase, you owe me that cartoonist. Fair enough, I said, a wave of relief washing over me. The first piece was in place. She'll need a place to start. Tell her to look into corporate expenditures. Travel, entertainment, consultants, especially consultants. We finished our drinks in silence, two old soldiers on opposite sides of a long war, forging an alliance that felt both treacherous and necessary. The next morning, I called a meeting with Elias in my study. The room felt like a war room, the air thick with conspiracy. I told him about my meeting with Rook. He paled slightly but nodded in understanding. It's a dangerous game, Margaret. Using the Tribune? It's the only move I have, I said. Arthur has insulated himself. He's surrounded by his own people. Chloe Sterling vets everyone who gets near him. We need an outside force, but they can't do it alone. They'll need a trail to follow. You're the CFO, Elias. You see the books. What are we missing? Elias leaned back, steepling his fingers. On the surface, everything is clean. Arthur and Chloe are clever. Their personal expenses are funneled through corporate cards, but they're all justified with expense reports, client dinners, strategy offsites, industry conferences. It's all plausible. Plausible is the first cousin of fraudulent, I countered. Dig deeper. Look at the vendors, the new ones, the consultants Chloe brought in. Are they real companies? What services are they actually providing? I can, Elias said, his expression grim. But if Chloe gets wind that I'm pulling these files, she'll report it to Arthur instantly. They'll lock me out. Then be a ghost, I urged. Do it after hours. Use your personal computer. We didn't spend 30 years building a secure financial system for you not to know its back doors. Find me a thread, Elias, just one loose thread, and I promise you I will unravel the entire sweater. He nodded, a renewed sense of purpose in his eyes. I'll start tonight. I'll look at the contracts for the new digital strategy consultants. They were Chloe's hires. The invoices are astronomical. With Elias on the financial trail and Jameson Rook's reporter on the outside, I turned my attention to the heart of the operation, the newsroom. I needed to see David Chen. I drove to the office in the middle of the afternoon, unannounced. Walking through the newsroom was like walking into a stranger's house. The familiar, focused hum of reporters on deadline had been replaced by a chaotic, loud buzz. Young people in designer sneakers huddled around monitors watching viral videos. The walls, once covered in storyboards for investigative pieces, were now plastered with whiteboards full of celebrity names and potential hot takes. I found David in his glass-walled office, looking haggard. He was staring at a layout for the Sunday edition. The lead story was an exposé on which reality TV star had gotten plastic surgery. He looked up and saw me, and for a second I saw the old, passionate journalist I had hired. Then the look was gone, replaced by a weary resignation. "Margaret," he said, standing up, "I wasn't expecting you." "I can see you're busy, David, shaping the national discourse," I said, gesturing to the layout. He had the grace to look ashamed. "Arthur and Chloe are pushing for a full visual-first redesign. They say our old layout is dense. The truth is often dense, David. It requires more than a passing glance." I closed the door to his office. "I came to ask you how you're doing." His shoulders slumped. "I'm tired, Margaret. I'm tired of fighting. Every story with substance gets shot down. My best reporters are threatening to quit. I spend my days arguing about why we shouldn't run paparazzi photos on the front page. We just lost Helen Ramsey. She's going to the Post." Helen Ramsey. Our best investigative journalist. The one who won us the Pulitzer. It was a body blow. Arthur let her go? He didn't even counter the offer. Chloe said her salary could pay for 3 junior content creators who understood TikTok. I let the silence hang in the air. This was the moment. "I am going to fix this, David, but I cannot do it alone. I need eyes and ears in this newsroom. I need to know what they're planning, which stories they're killing, who they're hiring and firing. I need someone to feed information to an outside source discreetly." He looked at me, his eyes wide with fear. "You're asking me to spy on my boss, on your son. They would ruin me." "And what do you think they're doing to you now?" I asked gently. "They are ruining your name. They are taking your life's work and turning it into a joke. I am offering you a chance to fight back, to restore this paper to what it was. I won't lie to you. It's a risk. But I ask you, what is the greater risk? Fighting for the soul of this company or standing by and watching it die?" I placed a small, encrypted thumb drive on his desk. "My personal cell number is on there. No calls from the office. No emails. Think about it. Think about why you became a journalist in the first place." I left him there, staring at the thumb drive as if it were a bomb. I didn't know which way he would go, but I had planted the seed. Now I had to wait and see if it would grow. That night, the phone rang. Number I didn't recognize. My heart leaped. "It's me," Elias said, his voice a tense whisper. "I found something, a consultant group, Sterling Strategic Solutions. They've been paid over $2 million in the last 6 months. Their registered address is a P.O. box in Delaware." "And?" I pressed, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. "And," Elias said, his voice dropping even lower, "the sole proprietor of Sterling Strategic Solutions, the person who cashes the checks from our company, is Chloe Sterling's sister. A P.O. box in Delaware. It was the oldest trick in the book of corporate malfeasance, a classic move to obscure the flow of money. And Chloe Sterling, for all her talk of disruption and new media, had used it. It was sloppy. It was arrogant. It was the threat I had been looking for. He knows, doesn't he?" I asked Elias, my voice a cold whisper. "Arthur must know. A $2 million consulting fee would require CEO approval. His signature is on every invoice," Elias confirmed. "Justified as essential for digital restructuring. Margaret, this is embezzlement. It's clean, it's simple, and it's a felony." "Get me copies of everything, Elias," I instructed, my mind racing. "Invoices, wire transfer confirmations, the incorporation documents for Sterling Strategic Solutions. I want a complete, undeniable paper trail. Use a secure channel. Send it to a Proton Mail account I've set up." "Not to me directly." I gave him the address. "I'm already on it, but what are you going to do with it?" "I'm going to hand-deliver it to Jameson Rook's shark," I said. "It's time to let her hunt." The next 48 hours were a blur of clandestine activity. Elias, moving like a ghost through the company's digital archives, compiled a dossier so thick and damning it felt radioactive to the touch. He sent it to me in encrypted fragments. I pieced them together in my study, the glow of the computer screen illuminating the righteous fury on my face. It was worse than I thought. Not only was Chloe paying her sister for non-existent consulting work, but the money was then being funneled into a joint investment account under her and Arthur's names. They weren't just gutting the company's ethics. They were using its coffers as their personal piggy bank. They were buying art, taking lavish trips to Dubai, and leasing a fleet of luxury cars. all while telling their employees that there was no money for raises, that veteran journalists had to be let go to make way for cheaper, younger talent. I arranged the drop. I gave Jameson's reporter, Sarah Jennings, the address of a dead letter box, a hollowed-out book in the fiction aisle of the Harold Washington Library. Inside, I placed a thumb drive containing the entire dossier. No notes, no names, just the cold, hard facts. Now the story was in her hands. A week passed. It was the longest week of my life. I went to the office, sat in on meetings, and maintained the facade of the gracefully aging founder, the matriarch who had been gently pushed aside. I watched Arthur and Chloe, their confidence bordering on smugness. They saw my silence as acquiescence. They saw my presence as a quaint nod to the past. They had no idea they were living on borrowed time. During one particularly galling marketing meeting, Chloe presented a plan to launch a new vertical called Chronicle Celeb, complete with a garish pink and gold logo. "This will be a major revenue driver," she announced, clicking through a presentation filled with paparazzi photos. "We have exclusive access to a source close to the Kensington Palace drama. We'll be breaking news that our competitors can only dream of." "And what news is that, exactly?" I asked, my voice dripping with false curiosity. "Inside information on the Duchess's postpartum struggles," Chloe said without a hint of shame. "It's raw, it's emotional, it's exactly the kind of content our target demographic craves. So we're in the business of exploiting a new mother's private pain for clicks now," I said, looking around the room. David Chen, who was required to attend, looked like he was physically ill. Arthur laughed it off. "Mom, you're being dramatic. It's just celebrity news." "We're not the first to report it. Robert and I had a rule, Arthur," I said, letting the memory of his father hang in the air. "We report the news, we do not become the gossip. There is a line, you are erasing it." "The line moved, Mom," he said, his tone dismissive. "You're just not standing in the right place to see it anymore." The casual cruelty of his words stung, but I held my composure. Soon, he would understand exactly where I was standing. The call came late on a Tuesday night. It was David Chen. His voice was hushed, nervous. "Margaret, I have been thinking about what you said." I held my breath. "I'm here, David." "They're going to do it," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "They're killing the zoning fraud story for good. They're reassigning the investigative team to the Chronicle Celeb vertical. Helen Ramsey's replacement, a kid fresh out of college, is now tasked with live tweeting reality shows. I can't be a part of this anymore. This isn't journalism." "I know, David," I said softly. "So what are you going to do?" There was a pause. I could hear him take a shaky breath. "I have the reporter's original notes on the zoning story. The city official's name, the shell companies, the falsified permits. It's all there." He was so close to breaking it wide open. "And you're willing to give them to me?" "I'm willing to give them to a real journalist," he said, a spark of the old David returning to his voice. "Whoever you're working with on the outside. Tell them to look for a package. It will arrive tomorrow." It was a crucial piece of the puzzle. The financial scandal was one thing, but combining it with a story about how the Chronicle, under Arthur's leadership, actively suppressed a major story of public corruption, that was the narrative. That was the 1-2 punch that would not only expose Arthur and Chloe, but would also vindicate my actions. I wasn't just a scorned mother. I was a guardian of the public trust. The next morning, I got a text from a burner phone. It was from Sarah Jennings. It contained a single line, "They're real and they're spectacular." I knew what she meant. The consulting documents, the invoices, the Delaware P.O. box. She had it all, and she had confirmed it. I texted back the details David had given me, telling her to expect a second, even more explosive package. The final piece I needed was the human element. The numbers and documents were damning, but a story needs a voice. It needed someone from the inside to speak, to give context to the betrayal. I thought of Helen Ramsey, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Arthur had so carelessly discarded. She was now at the Washington Post, but her loyalty, I suspected, was not to a building or a title, but to the truth. And she despised what Arthur had done to the paper she had loved. Finding her personal number was easy. I still had it from the party we threw when she won the Pulitzer. "Helen," I said, when she answered. "It's Margaret White." She was surprised, but her tone was warm. "Margaret, it's good to hear your voice. I was so sorry to leave." "I was sorry to see you go. The Chronicle is a lesser place without you, which is, in fact, why I'm calling. I know the circumstances of your departure were unpleasant." "Unpleasant is a polite word for it," she said with a dry laugh. "I was told my kind of journalism was a legacy product with poor ROI. I believe the woman with the terrifyingly white teeth called it that." "Chloe Sterling," I supplied. Helen, I am working with a journalist from another paper. They are preparing a story about what Arthur and Chloe are doing to the Chronicle. A story about financial mismanagement and a severe breach of journalistic ethics. Well, it's about time someone did, she said. What do you need from me? Your voice, I said. I need you to go on the record. As a background source, of course. To talk about the culture of fear in the newsroom, about the stories that are being killed, about the pressure to prioritize clicks over facts. You have the credibility no one can question. You are the soul of the old Chronicle. Will you speak to her? Will you tell her what you saw? There was no hesitation. Give me her number, Margaret. It will be my distinct pleasure to tell her everything. Now, all the pieces were in place. The money trail, the suppressed story, the credible inside source. Sarah Jennings had an arsenal. The only thing left to do was wait for her to fire the first shot. I felt a pang of sorrow for the son I was about to expose. I had given him every chance to lead, to honor his father's legacy. But he had chosen a different path. He had mistaken my love for weakness, my silence for surrender. He had forgotten that I wasn't just his mother. I was Margaret White, the woman who built the Chicago Chronicle from nothing. And I would be damned if I was going to let him be the man who destroyed it. The article dropped on a Thursday morning at precisely 6:00 a.m. It landed not with a whisper, but with the force of a tectonic plate shifting beneath the city of Chicago. The Chicago Tribune's headline was stark, professional, and utterly devastating. Chronicle in crisis. CEO, COO implicated in embezzlement scheme, suppression of City Hall corruption story. Sarah Jennings had woven the threads together into an unbreakable rope. She laid out the financial crimes with surgical precision, citing the invoices, the Delaware Corporation, the $2 million figure. She detailed how the money was used for a lifestyle of obscene luxury. Then she pivoted, using the information from David's package and the powerful, anonymous testimony of a Pulitzer Prize-winning former reporter, Helen, to paint a picture of a newsroom in revolt, an institution being systematically dismantled from the inside. The story was a masterpiece of investigative journalism. It was the kind of story the Chronicle itself should have been breaking. My phone started ringing before the sun was fully up. The first call was from Elias. He sounded breathless, energized. I've seen it, Margaret. My God, it's all there. They've got them dead to rights. Stay quiet, Elias, I warned him. Let it play out. Don't answer any questions. You are simply the CFO, shocked and appalled by this news. Of course, but what happens now? Now, I said, looking out my window at the waking city, we watch the vultures circle. The financial news outlets were the first to pounce. By 7:30 a.m., our parent company's stock, Vanco Media Group, was in freefall. Pre-market trading was a bloodbath. The talking heads on business television were using words like shareholder revolt, breach of fiduciary duty, and catastrophic failure of leadership. My second call was from a number I didn't recognize. It was Benjamin Carter, the chairman of the board for Vanco Media, a man I had known for 20 years, a man who usually only called to wish me a happy birthday. His voice was strained, stripped of its usual corporate bonhomie. Margaret, I'm hoping to God you can tell me this is a hit piece, a fabrication by the Tribune. I let the silence sit for a moment before I answered. I'm afraid I can't do that, Benjamin. I've had my own concerns about the direction of the paper for some time now. I chose my words with the care of a bomb disposal expert. I could not reveal my hand, not yet. Concerns? He practically shouted. Margaret, this is a 5-alarm fire. The stock has already lost 15% of its value. Our investors are calling for blood. We're holding an emergency board meeting via Zoom at noon. You'll be there, of course. Of course, Benjamin, I said calmly. I'll be there. The third call was the one I was dreading. It was Arthur. He didn't say hello. His voice was a raw, panicked snarl. Did you do this? Did you plant this story? Good morning, Arthur, I said, my voice perfectly level. I see you've read the Tribune. Don't play games with me. This has your fingerprints all over it. This is revenge because I wouldn't run your boring, old-fashioned stories. What I see, Arthur, I replied, my tone hardening, is a story alleging that you and your COO have stolen $2 million from the company that bears your father's name. A company that hundreds of people depend on for their livelihoods. Are you telling me that the allegations are false? He sputtered, for once in his life rendered speechless. He couldn't deny it. The evidence was overwhelming. It was a business expense, a consulting fee. It's a misunderstanding. Chloe's sister is a brilliant strategist. A strategist whose company address is a P.O. box and who happens to share an investment account with you and her sister. Arthur, please. Do not insult my intelligence. You have been caught with your hand not just in the cookie jar, but in the company vault. I'm your son, he yelled, his voice cracking with a mixture of rage and desperation. How could you do this to your own son? You are the CEO of a publicly traded company, I shot back, the dam of my restraint finally breaking. You have a duty to your shareholders, to your employees, and to your readers, a duty you have trampled on in your arrogant, greedy race to the bottom. You stopped being just my son the moment you decided to treat this company, your father's legacy, as your personal slush fund. The board is meeting at noon. I suggest you find a very good lawyer. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking. It was one thing to set the plan in motion. It was another to hear the pain and panic in my own child's voice. A part of me, the mother in me, ached. But the founder, the guardian of the legacy, knew there was no other way. This was a necessary amputation to save the body from gangrene. The hours leading up to the board meeting were chaos. The Chronicle's own newsroom was in an uproar. Reporters were demanding answers, holding impromptu meetings in the hallways. I received a short, cryptic text from David Chen. It's like the sun came out after a long winter. Thank you. I spent the morning on the phone with the other board members, the ones I knew still respected the old ways. Not the tech bros Arthur had brought in, but the seasoned veterans who understood what the Chronicle was supposed to represent. I didn't have to persuade them. The Tribune article and the plunging stock price had done that for me. I simply listened to their outrage and offered a steady, calming voice. I was not the architect of the chaos. I was the beacon in the storm. At noon, I logged onto the Zoom call from my study. The faces on the screen were grim. Benjamin Carter, the chairman, looked ashen. Arthur and Chloe were in the same frame, presumably in his office. They both looked like they hadn't slept. Arthur's usual slick confidence was gone, replaced by a sullen, defiant glare. Chloe was pale, her composure fractured. Benjamin opened the meeting without preamble. I think we all know why we're here. The allegations in the Tribune are of the most serious nature. Arthur, Chloe, this is your opportunity to respond. Arthur cleared his throat and launched into a prepared statement, reading woodenly from a paper in front of him. It was a litany of corporate jargon, unforeseen accounting discrepancies, aggressive but legal financial strategies, a targeted smear campaign by a competitor. It was weak, unconvincing, and it was doing him no favors. When he finished, I unmuted my microphone. All eyes turned to my small square on the screen. Benjamin, board members, I began, my voice steady and clear. I am, as you can imagine, heartbroken. I am heartbroken to see the name of this company, a company my late husband and I poured our lives into, associated with such a scandal. I am heartbroken for our employees who deserve better leadership. And I am heartbroken for our readers who have had their trust betrayed. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. For several months, I have held my tongue. I had hoped that our new leadership would find its footing, that it would learn to balance innovation with integrity. It has become painfully clear that this was a foolish hope. The company is not just suffering from a crisis of ethics, it is suffering from a crisis of identity. The financial issues are a symptom of a much deeper disease, a complete disregard for the core principles upon which the Chicago Chronicle was founded. I looked directly into the camera, as if I were looking into each of their eyes. This board has a choice. We can circle the wagons, issue a weak denial, and watch as our credibility and our stock price continue to evaporate, or we can take decisive, immediate action. We can cut out the cancer and begin the difficult process of healing. What are you suggesting, Margaret? Benjamin asked, though he already knew the answer. I am suggesting that this board has lost all confidence in its CEO and COO. I move for a vote of no confidence and for their immediate termination, effective immediately. Arthur's face went white with fury. You can't do that, this is my company. No, Arthur, I said, my voice as cold and hard as steel. It is not your company. You were a steward, a caretaker, and you have failed. The company belongs to its shareholders, and as the majority shareholder, I am telling you that your time is over. Benjamin Carter, seeing the nods of agreement from the other board members, wasted no time. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor of the immediate termination of CEO Arthur White and COO Chloe Sterling? One by one, hands went up on the screen. It was a landslide. It was a massacre. The motion carries, Benjamin announced, his voice heavy with finality. Arthur, Chloe, your access to all company systems will be revoked immediately. Security will escort you from the building. We will discuss severance and legal matters through our attorneys. Arthur just stared at the screen, his mouth agape, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He looked at my image, his eyes pleading, searching for the mother he thought he knew. But all he found was the founder, the queen, who had just checkmated him. The revolution was over. Now, the reconstruction would begin. The digital guillotine fell with swift, merciless efficiency. Within minutes of the vote, Arthur and Chloe's corporate emails were deactivated, their keycards ceased to function, and their faces vanished from the company's online leadership page. The news of their termination spread through the newsroom like wildfire, igniting a wave of what could only be described as cautious euphoria. I watched it unfold from my study, a remote general surveying a victorious battlefield. My first official act was to call an all-hands meeting for the following morning. My second was to appoint an interim leadership team. I called Elias. Elias, I said, the exhaustion and adrenaline warring in my voice. I need you to step in as acting CEO. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Margaret, I'm a numbers guy, a bean counter. I don't know the first thing about running the whole show. You know the difference between right and wrong, I countered. You know the value of integrity. You have the respect of the employees. That's more than enough for now. I don't need you to be a visionary. I need you to be a steady hand on the tiller while I navigate us out of this storm. I will be right there with you every step of the way. As what? He asked. The board has reinstated me as chairwoman, I said. It wasn't a request. It was a statement of fact Benjamin Carter had agreed to without hesitation. They needed me. They needed the stability and credibility my name still carried. I'm coming back, Elias. I'm coming home. The all-hands meeting was held in the main newsroom, the heart of the building. As I walked through the door, a spontaneous applause erupted. It started with a few reporters, then spread, growing until the entire room was on its feet, a thunderous ovation that washed over me and brought tears to my eyes. These were my people. The writers, the editors, the photographers, the printers, the true lifeblood of the Chronicle. I had not been fighting for a stock price or a title. I had been fighting for them. I stood on a small, makeshift stage, Elias by my side. I looked out at the sea of faces, some old and familiar, some young and full of a hope I hadn't seen in months. Thank you, I began, my voice thick with emotion. Thank you all. I know the last 24 hours have been tumultuous, and I know the last 6 months have been difficult and demoralizing. I am here today to tell you that the era of uncertainty is over. The Chicago Chronicle is returning to its roots. A cheer went through the crowd. Effective immediately, we are shelving the Chronicle celeb vertical and refunding the investigative journalism unit. Another, louder cheer. David Chen, I said, looking directly at him. He stood taller than I had seen him in a long time. You have my full support and the full resources of this company to pursue the stories that matter, starting with the City Hall zoning fraud. I want that on the front page by next week. David nodded, a fierce, determined look on his face. He wasn't just my editor-in-chief, he was my partner in this restoration. Our mission is simple, I continued, my voice ringing with a conviction I hadn't felt in years. We will tell the truth. We will hold the powerful accountable. We will be a voice for the voiceless. We will not be governed by clicks, by algorithms, or by the whims of celebrity culture. We will be governed by the principles of sound, ethical journalism. Profit will be the byproduct of our excellence, not the sole aim of our existence. This will not be easy, I concluded. We have a long road ahead to rebuild the trust we have lost with our readers and with each other, but I have never been more confident in the people in this room. The soul of this company was never in the corner office. It has always been right here with you. Now, let's get back to work. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. I set up a temporary office for myself, not in the plush CEO suite Arthur had occupied, but in a small, empty glass office right off the main newsroom floor. I wanted to be visible. I wanted to be accessible. I wanted them to see their chairwoman was back on the front lines. Elias, true to his word, was a rock of stability. He immediately began a forensic audit of the company's finances, working with a team of external accountants to uncover the full extent of Arthur and Chloe's spending. He reassured our advertisers and investors, promising complete transparency. My first private meeting was with David. We sat in his office, the door closed. The garish layout for the celebrity gossip section was gone from his screen, replaced by a complex web of names and shell corporations related to the zoning story. How quickly can you have it ready? I asked. Helen's replacement, the kid, he's actually got good instincts, David said, a hint of surprise in his voice. He'd already done some of the legwork on his own time, just out of curiosity. With the full team back on it, we can have it ready to print in 5 days. It's big, Margaret, bigger than we thought. It goes all the way up to the mayor's office. Good, I said. Don't pull any punches, don't worry about who it might offend, just print the truth. I will handle the fallout. Later that afternoon, I received a call from my personal lawyer. Arthur was threatening to sue for wrongful termination, for defamation, for emotional distress. Let him, I said, feeling nothing but a profound sense of exhaustion. The evidence against him is a matter of public record. His lawsuit will be laughed out of court. This is not about money for him anymore. This is a tantrum. The legal battle was a distraction. The real work was in the newsroom. I spent hours walking the floor, talking to reporters I hadn't spoken to in years. I listened to their frustrations, their story ideas, their fears. I met the young content creators who had been hired to track TikTok trends. I saw the talent in them, misdirected but present. I sat with one young woman named Maya, who had been tasked with writing listicles about fashion. "What did you want to be when you went to journalism school, Maya?" I asked her. She looked down at her hands, embarrassed. "An investigative reporter. I wanted to do what Helen Ramsey did." "And you still can," I said. "We're starting a mentorship program. Every junior reporter will be paired with a senior editor. David will be looking for people to help on the zoning story. Are you interested?" Her eyes lit up with a fire I recognized. It was the fire of purpose. "Yes," she said, her voice full of conviction. "Yes, absolutely. This was how we would rebuild. Not just by restoring the old guard, but by nurturing the next generation. By reminding them what journalism was supposed to be. The purge, as the wags in the newsroom called it, was quiet but swift. It wasn't a mass firing. It was a cultural realignment. Those who had thrived under Arthur and Chloe's regime, the ones who were more interested in personal branding than in reporting, quickly found the new environment inhospitable. They saw their pet projects canceled and their expense accounts scrutinized. Within a few weeks, most of them had resigned, chasing the next shiny object in the digital media landscape. Their departures were not mourned. One evening, as I was packing my briefcase to go home, Elias appeared at my office door. He looked tired but satisfied. "The preliminary audit is done," he said, holding a thick binder. "It's bad. They were even more reckless than we thought, but it's contained. We can recover. We'll have to take a significant loss in Q4 to account for it all, but we'll survive. The stock has already started to rebound on the news of the leadership change." "Thank you, Elias," I said, my voice filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you." "We did it together," he said. He paused, then added, "Have you spoken to him?" I knew he meant Arthur. "No, only through lawyers. He refused to see me." "I'm sorry, Margaret." "I am too," I said, and I truly was. But I made my choice. I chose the company. I chose our legacy. I would make the same choice again. As I drove home that night, the city lights blurred through my windshield. I thought about the son I had lost, perhaps forever. But then I thought of the family I had regained, the family of journalists, idealists, and truth-tellers at the Chicago Chronicle. The fight had been brutal, the cost immense. But for the first time in a long, long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The Queen was back on her throne, not in a corner office, but in the heart of the newsroom, surrounded by the ink and the noise and the glorious, chaotic pursuit of the truth. The front page of the Chicago Chronicle landed on newsstands and doorsteps the following Monday with the force of a controlled demolition. The headline, set in our classic, authoritative font, was simple and devastating. "The rezoning racket: How City Hall sold our skyline to the highest bidder." David and his revitalized team had produced a masterpiece. It was a sprawling, meticulously researched exposé, complete with leaked documents, on-the-record sources, and a damning money trail that led directly to two of the mayor's top aides. It was the kind of journalism that didn't just report the news, it made the news. It dominated the city's conversation. The mayor's office was in chaos. A federal investigation was announced by noon. It was a stunning return to form, a declaration to the world that the Chronicle was back. The public response was overwhelming. Subscriptions, both print and digital, surged. Letters and emails poured in, praising the paper for its courage and its commitment to the public good. We had lost their trust drip by drip over 6 months, and with one powerful story, we began to earn it back in a flood. It was a validation of everything I had fought for. But my victory was not without its casualties. The cost was deeply personal. A week after the story broke, I found him waiting for me in the lobby of the Chronicle Tower. Not Arthur, but his wife, Catherine. She looked thin, stressed, her usual polished exterior showing visible cracks. She wasn't there to scream or cause a scene. Her demeanor was one of quiet, brittle despair. "Can we talk, Margaret?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. We went to a small coffee shop around the corner, a place I doubted she had ever set foot in before. She stirred her latte, the spoon clinking nervously against the ceramic. "He's not well," she said, not meeting my eyes. "He doesn't sleep. He barely eats. He just sits in his study, staring at the walls. His lawyers say the U.S. attorney is considering bringing charges against him and Chloe." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. This was the fallout I had prepared for, the consequence I knew was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud by my daughter-in-law made it terrifyingly real. "I'm sorry to hear that, Catherine," I said, the words feeling woefully inadequate. She finally looked up, her eyes filled with a weary accusation. Are you really sorry? This is what you wanted, isn't it? You wanted to destroy him to get your company back." "I wanted to save the company," I corrected her gently. "Arthur's actions were his own. He made choices, Catherine. He and Chloe stole millions of dollars. They broke the law. This is not my doing, it is the consequence of his." "He's your son," she cried, her voice cracking. "He's your only son. He looked up to you, he worshipped his father. All he ever wanted was to make you proud. But he could never live up to Robert. No one could. So he tried to do it his own way, to make the company profitable in a way you never could. And you punished him for it." Her words were a poisoned dart, striking at the very heart of my maternal guilt. Had I been too hard on him? Had my expectations and the long shadow of his father pushed him to this? "Making a profit and committing fraud are two very different things," I said, my voice hardening slightly. "I did not punish him for his ambition. I held him accountable for his crimes. There is a difference." "Is there?" she asked, a bitter smile on her lips. "From where I'm standing, it looks like you chose a building full of strangers over your own family. The grandchildren are asking why they can't see you. What am I supposed to tell them? That their grandmother had their father arrested." "You can tell them the truth," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You can tell them that their father made a mistake, a very serious one, and that actions have consequences. That is a far more valuable lesson than any inheritance he could have given them." Our conversation ended there. There was nothing more to say. We were on opposite sides of a chasm that was too wide to bridge. As I watched her walk away, a small, defeated figure against the bustling city, I felt the immense weight of my choice. I had saved my legacy, but I may have lost my son forever. The days that followed were a strange mixture of professional triumph and personal grief. In the office, I was the conquering hero, the steady leader who had righted the ship. We launched the mentorship program, pairing veterans like David with young, hungry reporters like Maya. We began planning a new series on the city's failing public school system. The energy in the newsroom was electric. The Chronicle was alive again. But when I went home to my large, quiet house, the silence was deafening. The photos on the mantelpiece seemed to mock me, pictures of Arthur as a smiling boy, of family vacations, of a life that now felt like it belonged to someone else. I found myself talking to Robert in the empty rooms, asking him if I had done the right thing. He, of course, never answered. It was Elias who pulled me out of my melancholy. He came to my office late one evening, a week after my meeting with Catherine, and closed the door. "You're brooding," he said, not as an employee, but as the friend he had been for 30 years. "I'm thinking," I corrected. "No," he said, sitting opposite me. "You're torturing yourself. You're replaying every decision, every word, wondering if you could have done it differently. You couldn't have, you know that." "His wife thinks I'm a monster," I whispered. "His wife is married to a man who is about to be indicted for embezzlement. She's scared, she's angry, and she needs someone to blame. You're the easiest target. It's easier than blaming the man she shares a bed with." He leaned forward. "Let me tell you what you've done, Margaret. You've saved the jobs of over 400 people. You've restored one of this city's most vital institutions. You've given a young reporter like Maya a reason to believe in the power of her profession. You've held corrupt officials accountable. You have done more good in the last month than most people do in a lifetime. That is the other side of the ledger. Don't you dare forget to look at it." His words were a balm to my wounded spirit. He was right. Grief was a luxury I couldn't afford right now. I had a company to run, a legacy to protect. The federal indictment came down 2 weeks later. Arthur and Chloe were charged with wire fraud and conspiracy. The news was on every channel. The Chronicle reported it, of course. We put it on the front page, just as we would have with any other prominent business executive. We treated the story with the same journalistic rigor and impartiality we would give to anyone. It was the hardest, most painful headline I have ever had to approve. I didn't go to the arraignment. I couldn't bear to see my son in a courtroom, a defendant. Instead, I stayed at the office, working. I immersed myself in budgets, in story meetings, in the tangible, solvable problems of running a newspaper. It was my armor, my defense against the pain that was threatening to consume me. That evening, I was the last one to leave the office. As I walked through the quiet, darkened newsroom, the screens of the computers glowing like ghosts, I stopped by Maya's desk. Pinned to her bulletin board was a quote from a famous journalist. "The news is what someone somewhere wants to suppress. Everything else is advertising." And in that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. My son had chosen the path of advertising, of illusion, of empty clicks. I had chosen the news. I had chosen the truth. The cost of that choice was a piece of my heart, but the reward was the survival of something much bigger than myself. The soul of the Chicago Chronicle was intact. And it was a soul worth fighting for. The months that followed were a testament to the slow, arduous work of rebuilding. The legal drama surrounding Arthur and Chloe faded into the background, becoming another story for the courts to process. They both took plea bargains, avoiding jail time in exchange for hefty fines, probation, and a permanent ban from serving as an officer of any publicly traded company. It was a quiet, ignominious end to their meteoric rise and fall. I felt no triumph, only a deep, residual sadness. My focus remained squarely on the Chronicle. We became a beacon of what was possible in an industry struggling to find its way. We proved that principled, investigative journalism wasn't a legacy product with poor ROI. It was a sustainable business model built on the invaluable currency of public trust. We hired back some of the veteran reporters we had lost, and we invested heavily in training our young talent. Maya, the former listicle writer, was the lead reporter on our series about the school system, and her work earned a nomination for a local journalism award. Seeing her confidence and passion grow was a far greater reward than any stock price. We didn't abandon the digital world. We simply conquered it on our own terms. We launched a podcast that took deep dives into our investigative stories. We created a subscription-based app that offered our readers a clean, ad-free experience. We proved that you didn't have to pander to the lowest common denominator to succeed online. You just had to respect your audience's intelligence. My relationship with Arthur remained fractured. We communicated only through terse messages relayed by Catherine, mostly concerning the grandchildren. I sent them birthday gifts. I received polite, formal thank you notes. The warmth was gone, replaced by a permanent, icy distance. I had to accept that this was a wound that might never heal. It was the price of the war I had waged. One crisp autumn afternoon, about a year after I had retaken control, I was in my office when my assistant told me I had a visitor. It was Sarah Jennings, the Tribune reporter who had broken the story. I had never met her in person. She was younger than I expected, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. White," she said, shaking my hand, "I hope this isn't an intrusion. I'm working on a follow-up piece, a sort of 1 year later look at the industry. I wanted to ask you a few questions." "Please call me Margaret," I said, gesturing for her to sit. "And I believe I owe you my thanks," she smiled. "You don't owe me anything. You gave me the story of a lifetime. What you've done here, turning this place around, it's given a lot of us hope." We talked for over an hour. She asked me about the future of journalism, about the challenges of monetization, about the struggle for truth in an era of misinformation. Finally, she asked the question I knew was coming. "Looking back," she said, her pen poised over her notepad, "was it worth it, the personal cost?" I looked out my window at the city skyline, the same view I had looked at for 50 years. I thought of the pain in my son's voice, the accusation in his wife's eyes, the empty chair at my holiday table. The cost had been immense. "A few months ago," I said, turning back to her, "we received a letter from a woman on the South Side. Her apartment building had no heat and the landlord was ignoring the tenants. It was a small story, the kind that bigger papers often overlook. We sent a reporter. We put the landlord's picture on the front page. The heat was turned on the next day." I paused, letting the simple power of that story fill the space between us. "We get letters like that every week," I continued. "People who feel invisible, who have no one else to turn to. We are their last resort. We are their voice. So, yes, Ms. Jennings, it was worth it. Every sleepless night, every difficult decision. It was worth it because this is more than a company. It's a promise. A promise to our city that someone will always be watching, always be asking the hard questions. A legacy is not what you leave for people, it's what you leave inside people." My answer became the closing paragraph of her article. A few weeks later, on a chilly evening just before Thanksgiving, I was working late when I heard a soft knock on my open office door. I looked up and my heart stopped. It was Arthur. He was alone. He looked different, thinner, humbled. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a quiet uncertainty. He didn't come in. He just stood in the doorway, his hands shoved in his pockets. "I read the article in the Tribune," he said, his voice quiet. "The part about the woman with no heat." I simply nodded, unsure of what to say. "The work you're doing, the work Dad did, I never really understood it," he admitted. "I saw it as a business, a brand. I saw numbers on a spreadsheet. I didn't see the people." He took a hesitant step into the room. "What I did with the money, with Chloe, it was wrong. I know that. I was arrogant and I was greedy and I was a fool." He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with a profound, sorrowful regret. "I'm sorry, Mom. I am so sorry for the shame I brought on this family. On Dad's name." Tears welled in my eyes, the tears I had held back for over a year. I stood up and walked around my desk. I didn't know if we could ever go back to what we were. The damage was too deep. But for the first time, the chasm between us seemed a little less wide. "I know, Arthur," I whispered, my voice thick. "I know." I didn't offer him a job. I didn't promise that all was forgiven. Healing is a long road, and we were only at the beginning. But as he stood there, my son, stripped of his power and his pride, I saw not the failed CEO, but the boy I had raised. And I knew that my legacy was not just in the pages of the newspaper, but in the possibility of redemption, in the quiet, difficult work of rebuilding what was broken, whether it was a company or a family. I am Margaret White. I am a founder, a mother, and a fighter. I took back my company, but more importantly, I restored its soul. And in the end, I learned that true power isn't about holding on. It's about knowing what's worth fighting for and having the courage to burn it all down so that something honest and true can rise from the ashes.